next? Is this a pause for the Fed, or is this a wait and see?
Well, I think first you have to tell me what the inflation numbers will look like over the coming months, because I think their reaction will be to inflation. So I don't think we can know at this stage. I do believe that a number of the members of the committee would still like to get one or two moves in closer to the midpoint of the neutral range, and without saying it, build a little bit more cushion for the next downturn.
We didn't hear any hint of that yesterday. You think that was an intentional too, to not really tip the market off, that we're swinging back the other direction?
No, I just think the discussion of building ammunition for the next downturn is not something really appropriate to discuss. It makes it sound like you're raising rates in order to cut rates, and that's not sensible. But I do think in the back of the minds of some people is that if they could get the policy rate a little bit higher, they would be in a better position to deal with whatever comes down the road.
Phil, what do you think? Is the Fed on hold for the rest of the year, or just until we continue to see the data coming in?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Phil?
I think the Fed's on hold to mid-year, I think. And then they'll be in a position to evaluate the situation and evaluate, as I said, how the inflation numbers have come in, and also whether the forecast seems to be playing out or something else is happening.
Phil?
Okay, yeah. Look, I agree with Dennis. It's got to be in the back of their minds to do another hike or two later in the year. But it seems like yesterday they were telling markets, don't look at us, right? We're going to look at the data, but look at the real economy. Look at what's going on with the trade negotiations, with the inflation data. And to me, that puts them on hold until June, at least, because they're going to need to see inflation tick up for a couple of months in a row before they get off hold.
You point to a very good question, a very good point. All of these huge issues that are coming up with the trade negotiations on March 1st, you've already got just 2 weeks from now the other potential deadline for another possible government shutdown. All of those things have to weigh pretty heavily too, Phil.
They have to, and in some ways it puts the focus back on the White House, right? The administration has the ability to take care of these things. They can make progress with China, they can make progress with Congress, and really get the economy going and lift some of these clouds, and that would be good for everyone.
The other big issue, is that you kind of piping up, Steve? Because I was going to turn to you. I want to ask you about the balance sheet, too.
Well, okay, yeah.
Doesn't he? No, I was turning to you next. I want to hear what you have to say on this, Steve.
Up again.
Sorry.
So on the balance sheet, I think it was a sort of very confusing statement. I've talked to a bunch of former Fed guys this morning. And there's a couple things about it. First of all, the Fed passed a policy in June 2017 that specifically said it would not change the balance sheet runoff unless they had reduced rates substantially. It was kind of like the Odysseus test, where you strap yourself to the mast and then you sort of, make sure that you do not,
harpies?
Give in to, what is it, Medusa, I guess, was the one?
Harpies. Who are the harpies who were trying to come after him?
Right. So all of a sudden, the market comes along, it tanks, the outlook changes. What does the Fed do? Unstraps the ropes, says, you know what, go ahead, change the balance sheet. But then that's one line of it where it changed it. The other one, though, it says, you know what, we're still going to do it. We're only going to do it if we end up reducing rates. So it's a very confusing statement that's not clear. I tried to get a little clarity from the chairman, but first of all, they're not quite ready to talk about reducing
I think they don't know yet, right?
The pace of runoff. Or they're also not ready to give us a number as to where they're going. And I think what they want to do is I think they want this market sort of volatility to go away so that they can keep going doing the balance sheet, what they were doing, and somehow announce a higher target, or at least confirm the higher target that the market has now settled on, which is $3.5 trillion, which means there's $0.5 trillion to go, which means they'll be done by the end sometime next year.
Hey, Dennis, I like Steve's Odysseus reference. Let's stick with that for a minute. Who are the harpies? Are the harpies the markets, or is it the economy?
I love your program. El Capitan, Odysseus.
Yeah.
Well,
Dennis, you voted on that thing, right? You were part of the committee when you guys did that strapping to the mast thing, right? And now look what happened to your great plans.
Well, I suspect they'll revise that statement. My reading is that they will keep shrinking the balance sheet during a hold, But clearly, if there were a rate cut, then they would have to change the policy and go to a stop of some kind. But if the economy moves along as we expect, and they're on hold for the first half of the year, I think they're going to continue. I also think that they have more work to do internally in the committee to make the decisions on the terminal balance sheet size, as well as some other technical policies. So what you got yesterday was sort of a preview of coming attractions.
A preview of coming attractions meaning what?
More elaboration on not only the numbers around the plan, but exactly how they're going to operate in the future. So they'll answer questions of how they deal with mortgage-backed securities versus treasuries. Mm-hmm. They're going to end up with more mortgage-backs than they want, so there's going to have to be some trading there perhaps. So I think there are a lot of detailed questions that still have to be worked out.
Very quickly, are we in the markets looking for clarity that the Fed just doesn't have yet? I'll ask you that, Dennis, first.
Yes, I think to some extent. I suspect they have discussed this a lot, so there is a growing consensus, but they haven't brought it to a decision yet, and that will come in meetings ahead, and probably not too long from now, I'd say 1 or 2 meetings, we'll get a fairly thorough plan of how they intend to go forward.